Hello everybody, I'm the Mr. C and this is my One Wheel Crisis.
This time I took a ride down the Virginia Capitol Trail, which we'll be calling the VCT for the sake of my tongue for the rest of this video. Now, the VCT is a paved bicycle and pedestrian trail passing through 4 counties and 51.7 miles between Jamestown and Richmond, Virginia. And it's called the Capitol Trail as it runs between the first capital and the current capital of Virginia. Construction of the trail began in 2006 and was completed in October of 2015. Its 0-mile marker in Jamestown, directly adjacent to the Jamestown settlement and near the foot of the Colonial Parkway. At Richmond, the trailhead is next to the James River at the downtown floodgates of Great Shiplog Park. The VCT runs mostly along Virginia Route 5, and the Virginia Capitol Trail Foundation hosts an annual fundraiser bike ride marketed as the Cap to Cap. The trail is part of the 4,228-mile Trans-America Trail as well. And before you ask, and I know you're dying to, the VCT is a working partnership with the Virginia Capitol Trail Foundation, which promotes the trail, and the Virginia Department of Transportation, which built and maintains it. The VCT actually has a small portion near downtown Richmond converted from the previous rail bed. Now, the trail cost $75 million to construct. The 7 trail counters set up along the length of the trail, which received 550,000 hits the first completed year, and have a daily average of 300 hits. Now, this average indicates 766,500 hits for the year, but the wiki indicates 1.4 million hits by mid-2018. Our next stop is the Dairy Queen at 3275 New Market Road in Richmond, Virginia 23231. 8.9 miles away and should take us roughly 46 minutes, which is just about the right amount of time for a quick montage. The area I'm traveling through right now is the 4 Mile Creek Trailhead. There is alarmingly little information online about the trailhead. You can get this single frame web page at the back of the Henrico County website. But on Google Maps, you can even barely tell there's a park there unless you go to satellite view.
And as you can see, I made it to the first stop with no issue. Before I left on this trip, I had filled up my tire to 20 psi, so I ended up with more charge than I'd planned for. I only had the charge for 29 minutes, so I grabbed some grub, copped a squat, and then I was off like a flash again. My next stop was to be Indian Fields, roughly 18 miles away and 13 feet uphill. Probably not my best planning effort, but let's be honest, this last year has been rough on all of us. This trip was more about setting a goal and achieving it to stave off the stagnation of being home all the time and working 40 to 50 hour weeks. And before this whole process started, I ran 2 separate social groups, one for anime and one for board games, so it's been a little tough. Either way, this is where my master plan starts to show stress cracks. And the perfect opportunity for another montage. The woes of this tale start roughly 4 miles from here at the 25-mile marker. This is when I realize I've had my head in my patootie for a while and I've got problems. I just realized that I have 10% battery left. I'm just touched enough to know that I can get roughly 1.6 miles out of each 10% of my battery, and unfortunately less than that after you reach 30% and the wattage output starts to drop. Unfortunately, the next stop is 2.6 miles uphill. That's a slight incline, but it's still uphill, so by the time I get there, I have about 3% battery left. Look across the street. What do I see?
the family farm's seasonal plants and produce something or other. Now, my friend says everything past this point is an alarming amount of white privilege squirting out of my buttocks. My friend Dave says he's not sure if it's that or more of a fearless, willful, jovial ignorance. And I'm not sure that those estimations aren't just the different way to say the same things. Either way, I walked onto the property. I walked over and knocked on the door, and nobody answered. In my loudest voice, I'd said, "It's your neighbor. I've come to borrow some sugar." And I figured if there was a dog, as specified in the Beware Dog sign, that would probably get its attention. But again, nothing. So I walked around the house, found a plug, and charged my one wheel. Figured if I needed to, I could mi dispiace and be on my way. And that was when the gunshots started. Well, it seems that the next door neighbors on the next property over had pulled out their muzzle loaders and started shooting them. Roughly 2 to 3 of them by the sounds of it. At first I thought they were flintlocks, or at least I wished they were, because they're so romantic. Then I saw one of the guys using a ramrod to load a rifle, so that charge session lasted about 15 minutes, just long enough to get me down to the next station. This is where the video aspect of the ride starts to fall apart and we start to rely more heavily on the narrative. I put the camera away, but apparently I did not turn it off as I did so because I have roughly 45 minutes of lens cover. In regards to the next stop, which is Indian Tavern Rivers something or other, I had called previously to make sure I can get a charge while I was there, as well as lunch/dinner, and I'm advised that it would be no problem at all. So I get there, and I'm advised that the band is using the only plug available and they will be there for several hours. You mean to tell me there are no available plugs anywhere in yonder 2-story building? She goes and she checks with her manager and comes back and basically tells me to F off. As I'm doing so, one of the guys from the place rolls up, and not the employee, one of the people who's actually there enjoying the meal, rolls up and now offers to charge me off the back of his truck. Apparently there are plugs in back of trucks now. Very, very generous, but unfortunately it didn't work, so no lunch and no charge. I head a ways down the road until I find the Heritage Library. They have one external plug, so the one wheel gets charged and the camera stays dormant. The trip to Chickahominy Park from Heritage Library was fairly uneventful, 14 miles and took about an hour, but the sun was noticeably starting to go down at that point. The bridge that led to the park gave a great view of James River. As I'd left the park, the sun was well on its way down, and it was starting to get a little uncomfortably cold. Really good reminder to either plan less light or to go earlier. So I hustled along, me against the sunlight. I lost. And on the trip to Jamestown, I discovered a swamp. And I looked very hard, but no ROUS's. By the time I arrived, it was 9:30 p.m. and I had missed my cheesesteaks. My ride arrived 15 minutes later. I'll be putting this ride in the bonus section, as it can't possibly qualify as a real ride. It's much more of a test drive to see how I would run it the next time. And a special shout out to my 37 subscribers. Love you guys. And remember, as always, the best way to support myself and my channel is by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Thanks for spending the time and taking the ride. See you next time.